Hello and welcome to the NOTCAST, episode 252 today, Sunday, 27th of November, 2022. As both the title and the t-shirt are a dead giveaway, today I am going to be talking about The, and depending on your point of view, either their third or fifth studio record, released on the 11th of July, 1989. The album is Mind Bomb. And I'm also going to be talking about the band's first concert tour, loads and loads of singles, a live VHS, and a cat, because a cat has just walked into the room and he's going to have a conversation with me about something. I don't quite know what. I'm going to have a quick chat with him and find out in a moment. If you actually just want to watch the cat videos, I'll have a chat with him and see if he wants to be part of them. I'm not sure he does. Yes, do you want to come up? Come on then, come up. Or not, as the case might be. I'm just going to pick you up and I'm going to show you to all the people that live in the internet. There's quite a few of them. Come on then. Come on, dude. Here we are. Normally you have to wait until you're about 20 minutes into the video before he turns up. Today, you've got him for a grand total of 1 whole second before he decides he wants to sit down and do other things. So yes, today, talking about 1989 and being a The fan, the release of their third studio album, Mind Bomb, on the 11th of July, 1989. This is a strange period for the band. It was the first time where I felt that perhaps me being a fan of the band, I'd gone in a different direction from the group. So when it came out, Mind Bomb, 11th of July, 1989, I was about a week into being 16 years old. And when you're a week into being 16 years old, this is not the record for you. This was the first of the mature second period, I suppose, of it was a more advanced, more interesting, I think perhaps more mature approach, both lyrically and musically. What I was hoping for, which was doomy, sex-obsessed 80s synth pop rock with an indie slant and a whole bunch of ugly graphics on the front, is absolutely not what this album delivered. There was the news that obviously the band had changed. So Matt Johnson, previously being the nucleus around which everything that happened in the land of The occurred, had brought some extra musicians in and formed what was actually a 4-piece band, and the members included Johnny Marr. Johnny Marr being the Judas that had defected out from the Smiths. And Johnny Marr, by the way, I don't actually agree with that interpretation, but I think this period of the band got a lot of stick from fervent and heartbroken Smiths fans that wanted the boy to come back to the Smiths and to be chained forever to Morrissey. And the fact that he was off touring with another band was like, you know, when you see your ex with a new fella and it's like, damn, it really is over. There's no chance of her getting back with me. She's gone off with Matt Johnson instead. So there was a lot of flack that I think was thrown at this period, which had nothing to do with the album and its respective strengths and weaknesses. It started off with Iggy Pop suggested to Matt Johnson and Johnny Marr backstage at a show, probably around about 1986, 1987, as recounted in the book Long Shadows, High Hopes, is that Iggy asked if those two fellas were in a band. And the answer was no. And I think Iggy said something along the lines of, maybe you should be. And that kind of put the kernel in the idea of the mind. But also, of course, Johnny Marr had been asked to join the Smiths in 1982. And he had a choice between The and the Smiths, and he chose the Smiths for reasons including geography. He stayed at Matt's flat when he was trying to get the Smiths signed to a deal in London in 1982 as well. The offer had been there, so the idea was probably returned back to Matt and Johnny's mind once Johnny didn't need to be in the Smiths anymore. It was like, well, you could join The. And so that was the path that was taken. And there's a quote from Johnny in this book where he said, The are my favourite band, and Infected is my favourite record apart from my own. And when you think about that, if someone had said to me, do you want to join your favourite band? I'd have been like, well, of course I want to join my favourite band. Why wouldn't I want to join my favourite band? I mean, obviously there's reasons why perhaps I wouldn't want to now, including of which, of course, if any of you have heard me playing guitar, you know you wouldn't want me playing guitar in your favourite band. But of course the idea was there, and it was like, well, let's pick up where we left off 5 or 6 years previously and start with Johnny Marr as a member of The. There were some other members that joined the band as well. We had James Eller, who played with Julian Cope, I think we also had David Palmer, who was the drummer who was on the Infected album, who had played with ABC as well. And I think maybe Julian Cope as well, and you know, created a rhythm section there that was pretty solid. So we had a 4-piece version of the, and the first thing that anybody heard from the from the band was a atypical single that hadn't sounded like anything the band had released previously, The Beaten Generation. I have grown to love this song. I did not like it when it came out, not at all. I mean, in retrospect, The Beaten Generation sounds to me like a kind of like 80s, like a late 80s kind of version of Bob Dylan's Blowing in the Wind or something like that. It's even right from the title, The Beaten Generation, all the way down, it's very, very clearly a song that I think personally works best in an acoustic format. So the version that features drums and bass on the single isn't my favourite mix of the track at all. But also, it's a song that very clearly kind of draws a parallel between the 60s and the 80s. It had a 7-inch release. Here it is, back to the track called Angel, which is a curious instrumental. They're very good at curious instrumentals at this point, where it was a lot of different formats of it. We had the 12-inch here, which came with a poster, postcards, and an enamel pin. And we had the CD single, and we also had a 12-inch that replicated what was on this CD. And on this CD, we had 4 tracks, by the way. So we had an extra 2 mixes of the Beaten Generation. We had the Palmer mix, and we had the Campfire mix. And they're both pretty good, but I think they're better than the studio version that leads the single. And the version that leads the single of the Beaten Generation is the 4-piece band version with Dave playing on brushes, playing a very kind of gentle backing. And personally, I think the song works best with just a harmonica, a guitar, and a voice, which means that my preferred mix of the track, the Palmer mix, is on this CD single, and it may be on the 45 RPM compilation on the 2 CD version, which is back with a bunch of remixes. I can't remember. On the 12-inch, well, we had 2 12-inches. This is one of them. I didn't buy the other one. But this 12-inch has the box version, which you open up, and all the contents go flying on the floor. Absolutely typical. So, yeah, now I've picked those up. The contents of the box set, let's lift the lid off. And got to remember, this was made 33 years ago. This stuff was not designed to last. It was designed to get it high in the charts as a fancy bit of multi-formatting and a fancy bit of packaging, get you to buy it, get the band on top of the pops, and get people that weren't fans of the band to buy the record so the record company could make some more money. 'Twas ever thus. Looking in the contents that we've got here, by the way, you have a couple of postcards. There's Matt's lovely head, and there's the lineup of the band. You have an enamel pin that is quite small indeed. Almost definitely would have fallen off your jacket at some point. It has never been out of the plastic wrapper in the whole time I've had it. And you have a poster that makes it very, very clear that this is the versus fascism. And the fascism is spelled TH to imply a loathing of Margaret Thatcher. The kind people have a wonderful dream, Margaret on the guillotine. The poster folds out. I'm sure this poster adorns some walls, although I'm not quite sure why they chose that picture. It's just, pictures of 4 moody blokes, isn't it? It's not perhaps the most well-designed of posters. I think actually around about this time, the band's kind of lost their visual flair a little bit in terms of their releases. Their releases were very austere, very black and white, very one-dimensional. Just pictures of people being generally miserable. The Andy Dog artwork, there's by the way the 12-inch, the Andy Dog artwork, which was synonymous with the band's visual style and direction. Those kind of high contrast, high colour, very kind of dark lines that Andy Dog Johnson was putting together were nowhere present during almost all of the Beaten Generation and the Mind Bomb period. The only time that you saw them was actually on the tour t-shirts, which were not fantastic, and on the cover to the sell-through VHS, the versus the World. And I think maybe if this had been the cover that someone would have seen for Mind Bomb, that would have probably been more appropriate and probably would have actually helped the band's commercial appeal a little bit, because the cover of Mind Bomb really put, I think, a lot of people off, because you had a number of things that had changed in the group. So when the album was released, as it was here, we had, you know, just that picture of Matt on the front. And of course, on the Beaten Generation single, here's the 3-inch CD single box set version of it. Again, you've just got pictures of 4 guys, and you've got a 3-inch CD here, and you've got like a fold-out version of the pictures, which you will have seen on the previous versions. There we are. Obviously, multi-formatting was kind of a big deal at the time. By the way, this 3-inch CD single tells you that it is a previously unreleased mix of Soul Mining. That is nonsense. It's the same mix that's on the Sweet Bird of Truth 12-inch, or more correctly, the Sweet Bird of Truth CD single, and also on the 12-inch that was shrink wrapped with some copies of Heartland, which is backed with The Sinking Feeling. The Mind Bomb came out 11th of July 1989, and for me, it didn't land well, and it didn't land well with a lot of people. It didn't look like another record. It didn't sound like another record. It sounded like something else. And I do wonder, perhaps, if you look at the cover that's on that, it just looks like a fucking Phil Collins album, doesn't it? You know, you half expected maybe a black background with a blue tint and no jacket required written on it and that type of stuff in handwriting. The idea that it doesn't tell you much about the contents of the record at all. It doesn't tell you what the record sounds like. Frankly, it just tells, like, if you just saw that picture there, it'd be like, I'm just going to go and give you a serious fucking telling off now. My name's Matt Johnson, and I'm here to tell you about all the bad things that are going to happen in the world. And oh boy, this album is not a laugh fest at all. It is heavy, it is dense, it is deep. It's a different kind of music to the ones that you will have been used to from Soul Mining and Infected. The lyrics are very on the nose. Probably the equivalent of if somebody had taken an Oliver Stone film and turned it into a movie. They are very direct and very clear about politics and world politics and power and money and all the things that go with that. It had a new sound. The lyrics were very direct indeed, and it just, to me, some of the magic which you had from the period around Infected, that mystery, that kind of almost that air of State of the Nation address was kind of removed by what felt like sometimes you were listening to a political manifesto set to music in a way that makes the Manic Street Preachers sound like Shaft. It came out and hit number 4 in the UK charts. In the US, it went to the grand total of number 138, and it was a stylistic shift to longer, more textural, more intricate sounds. There was a degree of hectoring around it. It was not a huge amount of fun. What I will say, the title of the album, absolutely perfect, Mind Bomb. And if you look at the cover to the versus the World, you can kind of see how that could have actually been seen as you imagine if that had said Mind Bomb on it, you're going to completely understand what it is. But here, the idea behind Mind Bomb comes from the concept of splitting the moral atom, and that is the thoughts and chemical reactions that you have inside your mind, and how those cause a conflict between the gap between what you should do that's right and what to do that feels right, what you want to do and what you don't want to do, you know, the moral code that you've got to live by, and the ethics and the beliefs and all that stuff that you've got going on in your brain. Mind Bomb describes the concept of a conflict inside one's own brain, one's own soul, one's own mind. And then the idea of the political conflicts that fall out from and evolve from those differences of opinion which you have in the records. It is 8 heavy songs, and they are not fun. And you know, you open you look at that and you go, right, that's Phil Collins. You look at the back and you go, that's a bit serious. Look at the inner sleeve. There's nothing that tells you, apart from the band's logo right up at the top there, that this is the same act or the same singer that made Infected or Soul Mining or Pornography of Despair or Burning Blue Soul. There's absolutely nothing in there. You almost feel that like this is a new band. Now that is maybe deliberate, but at the same point it's also counterproductive, because if you were like me and you were 16 and you didn't have a huge amount of money at the time, and you were sat there going, I've got £6 every week to spend on records, and this costs £5.99, and you go, this is the only record I'm going to buy this week. It better be bloody good, because I've got another 168 hours until I've got another chance to buy another record. And this one, and you listen to it and you go, well, I bought it, so I better like it, because if I get next week's wrong, then it's 3 weeks between good albums, and it's not like Spotify or YouTube. You couldn't listen to another record easily. assuming you had friends and you had cassette tapes, you could tape an album off your friend, and between you and your friends you could have a pretty damn amazing record collection. But it wasn't really possible to just take a chance and hope that it would work out okay and spend £8 on a record, because if you got it wrong, that was a week, and that was a long week until you had an opportunity to have another good record to listen to. So Mind Bomb had to be good, and the bottom line is I wasn't old enough to really appreciate this record when it came out. I needed to be at least 10 years older, and in fact for most of Matt Johnson's recording career I've always felt that his records have been ahead of where I am, or in a different place to where I am, from Mind Bomb through to Dusk to Hanky Panky, to Naked Self. Though that period I was always feeling that where Matt was going wasn't quite where I was, and I was always kind of like going, oh, I wish the band had been a little different. Over time, I've grown into those records, and I've loved those records, with one exception, which I will get to. But at the time, I felt that there was somewhere where I wasn't. And so the album starts with Good Morning Beautiful. Good Morning Beautiful. My brother absolutely hates Good Morning Beautiful as the opening track from the album, which is really strange because I think it's an absolutely perfect choice for the opening track from the album. It's a long 7-minute or so track that builds up step by step into a huge cacophonic, almost apocalyptic description of the Earth as seen from a satellite from outer space. You know, the lyrics are very clearly around, you know, looking at the whole of civilization and society and going, guys, you are fucked. Putting it bluntly, you know, the lyrics around, you know, who is it that turns your blood into spirit and your spirit into blood, that can reach out and set your souls ablaze with lust, or fill you with the insanity of violence and its brother, lust, whose words have been twisted beyond recognition in order to build your planet Earth religions, who could make your little armies of the left and the right light up your skies tonight. It's all around control and thought and context and politics and belief and ideas, and how, you know, really we're all just little hands fighting for our own little slice of the turf on this planet. And although we align ourselves to nation states, all it is really is around resources and survival. I think it's a fantastic track to open the album with. It's long, it's detailed, it takes its time, it builds up a sonic texture. It allowed Johnny Marr to explore his guitar tones and sounds in a way in which he'd never been able to do in the Smiths, to explore the more funky, dirty, dark side of his playing, the more Nile Rodgers part of his playing as well, to use sound as a texture as opposed to a way of conveying a melody. The horns, which we have on the opening track, Good Morning Beautiful, very, very, very reminiscent of the horns that you'll have on tracks like Twilight of a Champion and Sweet Bird of Truth on Infected. And Good Morning Beautiful takes its title from a carton of eggs that you can see in the background of the Twilight of a Champion video, where you open the carton of eggs and it says Good Morning Beautiful on the carton of eggs, and that's where the title for the song came from. Well, insert the gif of the guy with his head exploded. That should do it. Well, pretend you do. Obviously, the chap in the gif has more hair than me. And then we go to track 2, which was the third single from the album. It was the first song to be recorded. It was also intended to be the first single from the album until things went a little bit wrong, which I will kind of talk through. That single is Armageddon Days Are Here Again, recorded by the 3-piece version before Johnny Marr had joined. So it's James Eller, David Palmer, and Matt Johnson. Matt Johnson playing all the guitars on Armageddon Days Are Here Again. And Armageddon Days Are Here Again was intended to be the first single from the album, probably in much the same way as Sweet Bird of Truth was perhaps originally intended to be the first single, and was the first single from Infected. Armageddon Days Are Here Again is a dark, deep, and to be honest, I listen to it now and I'm like, that is heavy. There's a really heavy song about some things which most songs don't ever really approach. It's built upon a riff from the Sweets Ballroom Blitz. Anyone that says, they have no sense of humour has not heard Armageddon Days Are Here Again. The idea that, you know, the track opens with a line to, you know, you ready, Jesus? Okay. You ready, Buddha? Are you ready, Mohammed? Oh yeah, let's go. And then the album starts with this rampaging kind of half glam rock, pain to nuclear apocalypse, religious war and destruction. It's cheeky as heck. It made number 70 in the charts because the band were going for the big number. Sorry, I sneezed. And it's prophetic, it's dark, it's got that right amount of funny, and it's got the right amount of silliness. It's got an incredibly dark sense of humour. It's almost as if somebody took Dr. Strangelove and put it onto a slab of vinyl for Armageddon Days Are Here Again. It is, I think it's a classic, the track. But its lyrics, you listen to the lyrics of Armageddon Days, and you kind of sat there going, oh my God, this guy is not fucking about. He's really, really just putting those lyrics right out there. The chorus is, Islam is rising, the Christians are mobilizing, the world is on its elbows and knees, it's forgotten the message and worships the creeds. It's war, she cried, it's war, she cried, this is war. And then there's, of course, the line about, if the real Jesus Christ were to stand up today, he'd be gunned down cold by the CIA. Now, me sitting there as a 16-year-old, I'm kind of going, whoa, this is heavy. As a 40-something person, I'm looking at it and going, okay, so that's, very prophetic. And you kind of go, right, I completely understand what you're trying to say here, that there's a religious war, and the religious war is being given or generated between different parts of the world, and we're all fighting over this whole land-air deal, as Bill Hicks once described it. But the reason it was intended to be the first single is because it had just the right amount of silly, daft, and memorable around it. And of course, controversy, but controversy helps sell records. But it came also in the midst of Salman Rushdie and the Satanic Verses, where there is, and I never fully understood this because I could never fully understand it. But I understand that, if people say certain things about a prophet, is that it offends some people in some religions, and they decide that the people that talk negatively about their sacred prophets are subject to the rules by which they don't believe. Now, there's a difference between religious persecution and religious oppression. Freedom of religion is where you, as a religious person, live your life by the code of which your religion dictates. Religious persecution and oppression is where you actually tell other people to follow the rules for the God that they don't believe in. And this was the kind of situation that we're dealing with Armageddon Days, where people that didn't believe in those particular sets of scriptures were being subject to the consequences of a god or a structure in which they didn't believe. And of course, then Salman Rushdie was very recently attacked. It's quite a hot topic, I think, but certainly Johnny Marr found this really, really weird when he was recording the album, because one of Salman Rushdie's safe houses, one of the places he was living where he was away from the public eye, was the flat above his in Chelsea in London. So he would see this post for S. Rushdie, and he'd be like, we've just recorded a song called Armageddon Days Are Here Again. We've got a song called Good Morning Beautiful about religious conflict. We've got, Violence of Truth, the next track on the album. And it's like, this is getting a bit close to home and a bit scary. And then they're kind of going, well, also, by the way, you can't release that song as your first single from the album because it's too controversial and it's going to be too offensive. Whoa, that is heavy. Third track is Violence of Truth, and Violence of Truth takes an excerpt of a sample from the track Angel, that is the B-side to the Beaten Generation, and it kind of uses that along. And the Violence of Truth is, man, if you were 16 years old and you were going to write an album about the state of the world, Mind Bomb would almost definitely be that record. And even as a 16-year-old, I was kind of sat there going, these lyrics are pretty blunt, and there is a very bad word indeed in Mind Bomb. It's a word that starts with an N, and I really wish that the album had had a slightly different word there. But aside from that, it's a fantastic song. I just wish it didn't have that word in it. And the chorus to the Violence of Truth, by the way, those are the rules of religion, those are the laws of the land. That's how the forces of darkness have suppressed the spirit of man. And I'm like, whoa, again, this is heavy, heavy stuff. And there's absolutely no mucking about there. Track 4 is Kingdom of Rain, which in another world would have been the first single to be released from Mind Bomb. The guest vocalist on Kingdom of Rain is Sinead O'Connor. What an incredible vocal she delivers for this song. It's a crying shame that Kingdom of Rain isn't a song that is better known by people, because it is one of both Sinead O'Connor's best performances. It's one of the others' best songs, and the reason it wasn't a single, it was a promotional single in the US, and it did have a promotional video for the US single, is that they didn't negotiate a single release. So when she recorded the track for the album, she said, right, I'm doing a track for the album. They didn't negotiate a single version or a single release in the contract for when she did the guest vocal, which means that if they wanted to release it as a single, they had to get her permission to do so. And there was a time when I think they asked Sinead O'Connor whether she'd allow it to be released as a single. I think she said no, because she had another single that was coming out that was quite good, and that single was called Nothing Compares to You, and I think you might have heard of that one. So that's probably why Kingdom of Rain didn't get a single release. But it's a wonderful song. Mind Bomb is split into two halves, by the way. The first 3 songs are all around politics and power and religion and death, all the things which are listed in Slow Emotion Replay. And then the side 2 is almost exclusively songs about love and relationships, apart from The Beaten Generation, which is the first track on side 2, and Kingdom of Rain, which is the last track on side 1. But if you think about them as being 2 flip sides, one is about the power of the heart, and the other one is about the power of the mind and the soul. And then, of course, the relationship is where the soul meets in both areas. So Mind Bomb is, I think, is a great LP. It's perfectly sequenced. I know my brother disagrees with me. My brother has the right to be wrong. He has frequently exercised it on the grounds that he has a heck of a lot more glam metal records than I do. I think voluntarily listens to, or has listened to, Motley Crue, so your argument is invalid. You've got a couple of friends that like Motley Crue. Don't worry, it's a broad church. I love you all, but I don't love every part of your music taste, in the same way that sometimes you think about some of the music which I like, you go, I can't believe you listen to that shit. And sometimes I go, I can't believe I listen to that shit either. Oh, His Highness wants to go out. Hang on a moment. I'll be back. Do you want to pop out, darling? There you are. Out of the room. Off you go. And so we're on to The Beaten Generation, which we've already discussed, which is, to me, Matt Johnson trying to write a song like Bob Dylan or one of the protest singers from the 60s and update it into the 80s. Is it any good? Not particularly. The LP version is probably my least favourite version of the song. And as I've mentioned before, the Palmer mix, which is on the CD single, is easily my preferred version of the song. We then have flipping over the album, side 2, track 2, August and September. Which takes its line, or opening line, is Suddenly Last Summer I Started Going Out of My Head. Suddenly Last Summer is a play by Tennessee Williams that was also a film that was released in 1958, where it uses sexuality as an instrument of terror and prejudice. And that is a very astute kind of reference to throw into the song. If you don't know the film, you don't know the song, okay, that's fine. There's a great cover version by Elbow. There's, I suppose, probably some of the sexual politics around Mind Bomb have not aged particularly well. Let's not forget it was recorded in the 80s. There's a line where he sings about the possessiveness of things like, what kind of man was I who would sacrifice your happiness to satisfy his pride, who would delay your destiny to appease his tiny mind. There's a degree of almost self-revelation or self-awareness after the fact, is that, if you're a man in a relationship and you hold a degree of power over the other person who's in a relationship, and let's not muck about, there are abusive relationships. I know people that are in them. And sometimes there's a man that would abuse or mistreat or misuse the other person in the relationship for their own degree of gratification. And it walks a fine line between somebody that's being aware of that and somebody that's only realised after the fact that that's been the case. And I think the amount of awareness around sexual politics and the awareness around degree in destiny and agency and control and dominion have moved on an enormous amount in the past 30 years. But for a record that was made in the 80s, it's pretty advanced in its understanding. It's a quantum leap ahead of the Scorpions' terrible and terrifying Virgin Killer, for example, in terms of its lyrical content. The seventh track on the album, and this is a strange place to see track 7 on the album, actually, is the second single that was released from the album. It is called Gravitate to Me. Gravitate to Me was, put technically, formatted to fuck. There are 3 different 12 inches of Gravitate to Me, of which I have all 3 versions, and there was a 7-inch and a CD single. I don't have the CD single because the remix that's on the CD single is also available on the 45 RPM compilation. But Gravitate to Me is a often forgotten The song, and I think unjustly so. The album mix of the track is 8.5 minutes long. It is too long, and there's too much of it. It's not an exciting LP track. It's too long. Whereas the remix, the 4-minute version. Oh, I've got a Peel Sessions inner sleeve in here. It's been a very long time since I've opened this. I might have to put that inside the one of the Peel Sessions releases. But the LP mix is too long. It's pondering, it's monotonous, it goes too far, and it doesn't explore enough. The 12-inch version, the dance mix, although if you ever dance to the dance mix of Gravitate to Me, you are a weird and sick little puppy indeed, has been remixed by Francis Korvakian, and it's better, it's tighter but looser, to quote the great Led Zeppelin. It's more enjoyable. It's the only problem with the dance mix is that it fades, and the 7-inch version takes out the first verse of the track, the first verse of which makes the rest of the song far more worthwhile. It's backed with the standard LP mix of Violence of Truth, which is pretty odd because there were some remixes of Violence of Truth that were out on promotional 12 inches and later appeared as B-sides on the Dogs of Lust single. And you also had, by the way, the etched 12-inch. Here's the etched 12-inch, so you can see there's the sleeve that has the band's faces printed in a circle around the cover. This features a 10.5-minute dub mix by Francis Korvakian and the original and now long deleted 12-inch mix of I've Been Waiting for Tomorrow All of My Life. But just so that you can see, that's what the etched 12-inch looks like. It's pretty sexy, I think it's fair to say, as far as your etched 12 inches go. But it is, of course, a novelty. It's designed to get you to buy an extra copy, and the band, like a number of other acts around about this time, were aware of multi-formatting. This is before the BPI put rules in saying you could only release a maximum of 4 formats. You could only have a maximum of, I think, 4 tracks, and it could only be a maximum of 20 minutes. At the time that this was happening, that wasn't the case. So here's the third 12-inch. This is the box set 12-inch version. This features the dub mix and I've Been Waiting for Tomorrow All of My Life as well. So if you don't want it, have it on one side of a 12-inch, you can have it on 2 sides of a 12-inch. And this dub mix, by the way, is still not released digitally, officially, that I've been able to find at all. It's good, it's not great, and I think probably the definitive mix of Gravitate to Me is probably the little version that's on the 7-inch, which means you could have had space for an extra song on the LP. But the 12-inch also featured 4 art cards of members of the band: Matt Johnson, James Eller, David Palmer, who later went on to play with Rod Stewart, and of course the Johnny Marr. And there was also, if you ever wanted to stencil anything, you could stencil the logo here onto anything you wanted by pulling it out. I used to do, but I don't. Again, this 12-inch was designed to be bought, stuck on a shelf, get the song up in the charts, and then forgotten about for the rest of its natural existence. So, the people that made these, stuck these together and signed all these off, probably didn't realise what they were doing, creating a monster, because I've still got these bizarre and unusual 12-inch formats in my life. And in the room where I do all of my work are these records. The third single released from the album, of course, is Armageddon Days Are Here Again, which I will get to in a moment because we have one more track on the LP. It is called Beyond Love. And Beyond Love is, I think it's a great song. It's one of the most mature songs around love and relationships. To be fair, this album has aged phenomenally well. Mind Bomb I've grown into. I listened to it a lot in recent years. At the time it came out, I was like, I guess I'm not a huge fan of the anymore. Now I'm a lot more mature in my approach to the songs that are on the LP. And it's kind of quite graphic around drops of semen and clots of blood that will one day become like us and all those type of things. But at the same point, it's a song that has take me beyond love, take up to something above, upon this bed between these sheets, take me to a happiness beyond human reach. Now, that's always been a bit of a horn dog in his songs, as you'll remember from Out of the Blue Into the Fire. About, she was lying on her back with her lips parted, grilling like a suckled pig. I'm like, Jesus, really? Even as a 14-year-old, I was like, okay, you've known the touch of a woman. Thank you. Kind of like a redeemable indie Barry White, maybe. But instrumentally, Beyond Love is a phenomenally good song. And the live version of the song, by the way, contains a coda, a 2-minute coda, which is wonderful. And the band added that in the midst of the tour. So if you get an opportunity, listen to a live version of Beyond Love from the Further versus the World Tour. It is brilliant. It is so much better than the studio recording. And you could slot it on there if you really wanted to. You could mix it into the LP version of the track and not know the difference. I've done it on my playlist of the album, by the way. Third and final single from the album, Armageddon Days Are Here Again. And again, this had a lot of different formats. So let's quickly race through those. There was a 7-inch back with an orchestral version of the track. There was a CD single, which had the first CD release of the Soul Mining LP mix of Perfect, which is not on currently available CDs. Also has Mental Healing Process on there, which is taken from the cassette of Soul Mining and some of the singles. The 12-inch, or more correctly, the 10-inch had Nature of Virtue, which appeared on the B-side of, I think, Uncertain Smile. The 12-inch has Perfect and Mental Healing Process, as well as the radio edit of Armageddon Days and the LP mix. There's a 10-inch, which I don't have, because I've already got all the tracks on the 10-inch anyway. And there is also, of course, but there's an etched 12-inch, which features somewhat oddly the two tracks on one side, and on the other side it has the dove from the LP cover and the lyrics to the song kind of all placed out there. Etched 12 inches were a really big deal at some point. I don't fully understand it. Presumably it was to get suckers like me to buy it and get the song further into the charts, but it only got to number 70, so it doesn't really matter how many formats it did, because you were selling it to the same amount of people, and there weren't any new songs. The only new track you really had was the orchestral mix of Armageddon Days Are Here Again. You didn't have a remix of Armageddon Days Are Here Again, although there was a remix of it by the dance group DNA that was on an unofficial bootleg 12-inch, and those mixes, Violence of Truth and Armageddon mix of DNA, later appeared on the Dogs of Lust CD single from 1993, as well as the Dogs of Lust 12-inch from 1993. But that's leaping ahead one album into the future. There was an extra song, not a B-side, an extra song which was played live, but not released at the time. It got a promo 12-inch, or a 12-inch release in America. It got a 7-inch release as a promo 7-inch in Spain. That song is called Jealous of Youth. And Jealous of Youth, in an ideal world, I think I would have taken Gravitate to Me, put the 7-inch mix on the LP, and put Jealous of Youth on the LP as well. Maybe adding it after August and September and before Gravitate to Me. But there is a vinyl 7-inch of Jealous of Youth, the 7-inch mix from Spain, on a one-sided 7-inch promotional single. Jealous of You've got a release on the EP called Shades of Blue. I don't have a copy of Shades of Blue because I have the album that was released in 1994, Solitude, and this features all the tracks from Shades of Blue. And Shades of Blue features Jealous of Youth, a live version of Another Boy Drowning, a cover version of Solitude, and a cover version of Dolphins. I think Dolphins was performed by Ella Fitzgerald. To jazz standards. There will be more The cover versions coming up in future, but not quite yet because The went on tour. And they did the Mind Bomb World Tour in 1989 to 1990. Here is the tour program. Here is the sell-through VHS. The versus the World, directed by Tim Pope, and here is one of the promotional live albums, The Alive, interviews and live music. So this is a radio promotional 4-track plus interview CD, and I think the live tracks here were recorded at Sydney's Hordern Pavilion. On August the 4th, 1989, on the band's first world tour. So this was in the first few dates that the band played live. This features live versions of, and let me just quickly get this absolutely correct, Heartland, The Beaten Generation, I need to check this, Infected, and Beyond Love live. And those have not, I don't think these have been issued on any kind of CD format apart from this promotional live release here. The World Tour, versus the World, started in August 1989 with some shows in Portugal, and it went all across the world: Australia, America, Europe, and then back to the UK alongside, I think, 3 UK shows or 3 UK legs. I think they played UK in October 1989 after a couple of months on tour. They went back, I think, at some point, and then they also kind of ended the tour with 3 shows at London's Royal Albert Hall in June 1990. And June 1990 was the last live shows that this lineup played by the band. So we had Johnny Marr on guitar, Boo, Here's How Dare You Break Up the Smiths, Johnny, etc., etc. Obviously, James Eller on bass, David Palmer on drums, before he defected to go and play with Rod Stewart. And on keyboards, we had DC Collard. DC has been playing with the band recently on their 2018 World Tour as well. And the curious bit of information here is that DC Collard was the band's keyboard player on this tour, but Steve Hogarth, who was a piano player, was also asked if he wanted to play piano with The on this particular tour, and he declined because he had an offer from another band. The other band was called Marillion, and he was offered to sing for them. Pretty amazing bit of offer there. I think I would have taken the same one. At the time, of course, I was thinking, how could someone choose to play with fucking Marillion instead of playing with The are so much better. But of course, having the artistic control and power to influence the band and to shape it as their vocalist probably gave Steve Hogarth both financial and creative satisfaction that maybe being in The wouldn't have done at the time. I completely understand that now. 1989 me was totally wrong and needed to take the Matt Johnson blinkers off, because had I accepted that offer instead of singing for Marillion, I'd now be thinking, I could be a fucking singer in Marillion, and Marillion could be much better because I could be in them. Of course, if you're a Marillion fan, you'll disagree with me. That's completely okay. I disagree with you. I think Marillion would be better with me singing if I could sing, but I can't sing, so it doesn't matter. And so The versus the World Tour was the first live shows that the band ever played outside of London. The band had played, a handful of small number of shows, one-off appearances in London, in and around various places, including that residency at the London Marquee and some shows at the New Cross venue. But they hadn't played live since 1982 or 1983. And so they went on tour, and they played the tour for 10 months before the last shows at the Royal Albert Hall, which were filmed and issued on this now long deleted VHS tape, The versus the World, although most of it is digitized and it's on YouTube. There is also a show from the Club Sitter in, I think, Kawasaki in Japan in 1990, which was broadcast on Japanese television and is also available on YouTube. But this was the first The live document, and it's a really good band, actually. Really good lineup, very solid. very good, fluid. If you watch that lineup, you go, there's no way. Why would you change that lineup unless you had absolutely no choice? Because it was a great lineup, and I just really, really enjoyed the live performances, and they're excellent and strong. And I think that the concept of the versus the world kind of affected the well. The band were going on tour. They were playing the whole of across all the places in the world, playing live, and they were going to go and bring their shows to the universe. Hang on, there wasn't a live album that was released from the tour. This was released last year or the year before as the official bootleg too. It is a 10 song or so, 9 song live set recorded in 1990. It does not specify at which venue this was recorded at, but I think it might have been the Royal Albert Hall. There were a number of radio broadcasts that were made from the tour, including Sydney, Bradford St George's Hall, Glasgow Barrowlands, and of course the London Royal Albert Hall as well. This official bootleg, which you can buy from the website for £10, features a official bootleg of recordings from the Mind Bomb tour, 9 songs. And a number of the songs from the tour were also released on various singles. So, for example, Infected was on the Dogs of Lust single, Jealous of Youth and Beyond Love was on the Dogs of Lust single. The other format, Slow Motion Replay, for example, had some other live tracks that were on it around about the same time. The idea of Mind Bomb, and I think that the album is why it's aged very well and also terribly at the same time, is the whole album is kind of discussing a spiritual crisis, the fight between God and nature versus nurture, the idea of religion and belief, the Bible and the Quran and the I Ching and whatever, fighting between various belief systems. One side capitalism and communism, on one side religion versus atheism, on another side we're dealing with the fall of Berlin, Tiananmen Square, a period of great cataclysm in world politics. The world was coming to a close in so much as the 80s was coming to an end, and the 1984 style authoritarian world which we were having was being overturned. We were seeing things like dictatorships were being turned over, and there's a degree of the moral panic that existed alongside the Falklands War. What we were dealing with Mind Bomb, and this is where I think the album really, really works, is about the conflict that exists both in our hearts and the conflict that exists in our souls and in our minds between various different forms of belief, and trying to reconcile all of those to create some kind of version of reality that we can live with. Mind Bomb has no conclusions about that. It just really ends on a note of, I think, of optimism, the idea of where you can go beyond the grasp of lust, beyond the need for trust, beyond the gaze of the sick and the lame, beyond the stench of human pain. You can go to a place that is beyond all of the earthly kind of problems that we have, and takes us to some other place. And that is where Mind Bomb, I think, really goes. It is a really good album. It is way out of time for when it came out in 1989. It was the wrong song. It was the wrong album. It wasn't fit for the times. It was fit for another place in human history, I think. It is an album that was out of time but has become timeless. I think it's a bloody brilliant album now, but as a 16-year-old that wanted Infected Part, Electric Boogaloo, it was not the record that I was expecting to hear. It wasn't the record that I wanted. It didn't look the way that I thought the record would look. It didn't sound like the way I thought the record would sound, but I have grown to love it over the years. But at the time it came out, I was kind of thinking maybe me and the are going to split up now and go in different directions. But instead of that, this is an album that, like Dusk, also rewarded repeated listening over a long period of time. I grew to love this record. I didn't grow to love the cover, but I did grow to love the record, and I recommend it highly. So that is There's Mind Bomb. I can't recommend picking up a copy of The versus the World. You just can't get it. So go and watch one of the shows on the YouTubes, and there you are. In the meantime, obviously, like and subscribe as the song by the Adam Buxtonator goes. Take care of yourselves and each other. Stay beautiful, and I will see you all again, hopefully sometime soon. Adios, amigos. Bye.